Hey guys, it's CWillyHD here, and welcome back to another episode of Game Breakers. This time we're going back to Earthbound to look at a whole bunch of glitches. I've covered this game a few times, but this one's going to include all the glitches I know for this game. There's a whole lot to look at, like getting out of bounds, unlimited stat boosting, playing as the robots in the main world, and getting 4 billion XP. So let's not waste any more time and get into Earthbound glitches. A well-known glitch is using skip sandwiches to clip through walls and reach new areas. A useful spot takes place in Twoson and involves clipping through 3 different walls. Purchase some sandwiches from the stand nearby and head down to this cliffside. Eat one and squeeze into this corner. From here, alternate tapping left and down on the D-pad. You should begin to see Ness clip into the wall and move to the left. After a few more taps, you'll pop through to the other side of the wall. A quick side note, the texture is a little buggy here, so you'll see it clip through Ness's face a few times. Anyway, you have 2 options for the next cliff, and I'll show off both. If you go to this corner, you basically have to do the same thing as the first. Wiggle into this corner and then tap left and down. You'll pop through and ready for the final clip. If that way isn't working out, walk over here to this double-sided one. Get into this corner and repeat the left and down process again. Another weird thing happens in this area too. The border between Twoson and Threed is in this out of bounds area, and by wiggling around in this corner, you can cause the game to pause for a second while switching between the 2 music tracks. Once you've had your fun and clipped through, we're now ready for the final and toughest one. There's no corner to get stuck into, so it's easier to pop back out of the spot. Eat another skip sandwich and align Ness so his hat is touching the grass above, and begin rolling your thumb across right and up on the D-pad. I didn't have much success with simply tapping, so rolling helps you wiggle faster. You can also back up and reposition yourself if you need to, but with a little luck, Ness will begin squeezing through, and soon enough you'll pop onto the other side back in bounds. And there you go, you can now enter the tunnel to the left and enter Threed. Normally the ghosts stop you from leaving Threed when you try and enter this tunnel from the other side, and since we're in the same tunnel just on the opposite side, they'll still approach you and throw you back into Threed. You can now continue playing the game like normal, skipping all of Twoson and Happy Village. In case you're worried about skipping Paula, she automatically joins you when Jeff does, so you're all good there. From that point you can play through the game like nothing ever happened. Going back to before, you could technically go to the right instead of Threed and play through the game like normal for a little bit, reaching Foreside, watching the Runaway 5 and all of that. However, when you go back to the desert, you have to do a pretty difficult dungeon in the mine, so it's practically impossible to progress, due to the underleveling and lack of party members. The next spot to perform this glitch is next to Ness's house. You could just wiggle and pray you get it, but there's a very consistent lineup thanks to Daniel RGT. Have Ness always standing exactly like this. The lineup is pixel perfect, so it's important that you get exactly like this, with his small foot in line with the grass, and his bigger one like this with 1 lighter green pixel showing. Once here, eat a skip sandwich, tap right, then tap down, and boom, you'll be through pretty easily. There's a good chunk of out of bounds area you can look around. There isn't a whole lot to see as you just get stuck either way you go. However, there's an extremely useful thing you can do, and that's why we're up here. There's a way to access the debug menu from this area. So the check area glitch occurs when you try to, well, check an area that's off the map. Starman.net's full map guide shows the exact layout of Earthbound, and as you can see, this corner is not part of anything. Pulling up the debug menu can be completely luck-based. One confirmed way is getting an empty text box with certain memory values, then dismissing the empty box while pressing down, right, A, B, and Y on the first player's controller exactly 11 or 13 frames later. However, I ended up using 3 Game Genie codes to open it up right away with the ATM card. Anyway, now that we have it open, you might notice it isn't exactly legible. Here are the rough translations for all these menus. Going over these really quick are Party Edit, which can add or remove party members, Special Statuses, which can give status ailments to characters like Diamond Eyes, Money Editing, which can change the cash on hand or in the ATM, Delivery stuff like Escargot Express and Mock Pizza, Hints from the hint guy based on your input, Item descriptions like when you press help on the goods menu, again input based, Hint map marks the hint shop on your map, Goods Edit will edit your items and inventories and add ones too, Move to area will throw you into another place that you choose, Level Up will either level up your whole team or 1 member, Event will warp you to an event that you choose, Sound will play a music track, sound, or audio effect. Finally, Teleport will either running, spinning, character map, or event teleport you to Saturn Valley. And that's pretty much it for all the options. You can basically achieve anything with the debug menu. For example, I added King to my party and then teleported to Dalam. Here I also climbed the rope with King, which is something that the game never expects you to do, so it creates this messed up sprite. One final note about the debug menu, there are other areas of the map you can access it with, such as the Threed Circus tent. As you can see, this spot is not actually on the game map either. This one also doesn't require you to clip through the cliff, but it's only accessible later in the game, so speedrunners use the other Onett area to beat the game in around 10 minutes. Up next in our cliff skipping journey is Winters with Jeff. By doing this one, we're able to skip all the way over to the lab and leave Winters a lot earlier, skipping Bubble Monkey and Brick Road. Just as you hop over the fence, head into the item shop and sell the big bottle rocket, the broken spray can, the Holmes hat, and the pop gun. This will give you enough money to buy 2 skip sandwich DXs. I'd recommend saving your game as you only have 2 sandwiches, so if you don't get both of these on the first try, you'll have to reset. Anyway, leave the shop with these in Jeff's inventory. Head down a little ways till you get to this cliffside. While we have a second, this glitch was discovered by Daniel RGT again, and are referred to by most as the Cliffs of Daniel. Anyway, we now need to wiggle into this corner so Jeff won't go up anymore. At this point I'm holding up on the D-pad and it's not moving me at all, which is what we want. Now eat a sandwich and begin alternating between left and up as fast as you can. After a little bit of mashing, you'll pop through and out of bounds. From here, guide Jeff all the way down to Stonehenge. Before we do the next clip, take a moment to observe the glitched brick road entrance. Since it's still nighttime, there isn't a tile set for it, so this is the result. Anyway, back to the actual task at hand, we're going to be doing a similar technique with this cliff edge, by wiggling Jeff until he can't move left anymore. Again, I'm holding left here, but I'm not moving at all. Now eat your second skip sandwich and tap left and up on the D-pad yet again. Eventually, if you mash correctly, you'll pop through into Stonehenge just outside Dr. Andonett's lab. You can now take the Skyrunner and meet up with Ness and Paula. Combining this skip with the Twoson one cuts out a lot of the game and saves a boatload of time in speedruns. I have to say though, these ones in Winters are pretty difficult, so keep that in mind. These last few clips are thanks to Hallam Ontario. Sorry if I messed up your name by the way. For this first one, head to this spot in Peaceful Rest Valley and use this skip sandwich to wiggle around this corner until you pop through to the other side. Sadly, I don't have a consistent lineup for this one. I just wiggled around this line to the left until I started clipping through. But by doing this, you can reach the house Paul is trapped in a little sooner and obtain the Franklin badge. In the cave east of Happy Happy Village with Mondo Mole, eat a sandwich and wiggle in this corner. This allows you to skip a little bit of walking and potentially some fights too. And finally, in Saturn Valley, in the area with the hot spring, you can squeeze into this corner and with a skip sandwich clip through this ledge pretty easily. Sadly, you cannot talk to Mr. Saturn on top of the ladder from this direction even though the collision is still there. When you're done walking around this little out of bounds area, there's no way to get out, so your only option is to reset, so make sure you save before doing this clip. Next is a glitch involving teleport in Winters. Similar to the skip sandwich clips, there are certain walls you can clip into when using the speed from Teleport Alpha. Thanks to It's a Mess for the discovery and the task of this specific instance in Winters. Use teleport here, begin building up speed, avoid bumping into the walls around you, and fly into this spot in the wall. Ness and crew will end up on the other side out of bounds. You can now explore this area of Winters that's never supposed to be seen. A lot of areas out of bounds in Earthbound are mapped out pretty well to create immersion, but after a certain point there will just be this big blue void. It's neat that they add all these paths in collision like they would actually be a playable area though. Once you're done exploring, you can get back in bounds using the technique Jeff did before. Get into this corner of the cliff overlooking Stonehenge, push your way into it so you can't move left anymore, and eat a skip sandwich. Mash up and left and after a little time you'll pop back in bounds. I'd imagine you can use this in other areas by building up speed with teleport, but I haven't found other ones that work myself. Up next is a very useful glitch to boost stats. The rock candy item can be eaten to increase speed, guts, vitality, IQ, or luck. However, you can only use it once, but we can change that. Go to a place that sells condiments like the Fourside department store. Have a character with an empty inventory and stack up on something like sugar packets. Leave one slot open and pick up a rock candy, which can be found in the Pink Cloud Caves, Lamine Hole, or Deep Darkness. Once your inventory looks like this, you're ready to roll. Enter a battle and use the rock candy on someone. It'll use it along with the sugar packet, but when you go back to that person's inventory, only the sugar packet disappeared, and you're able to use the rock candy again. You can repeat this process over and over again until you only have the rock candy left. After finishing the battle, have a look at your stats. As you can see, I boosted Ness speed up by 6, guts by 2, vitality by 6, and IQ by 12. If you want to boost them even more, simply go back and buy more sugar packets until you're full again. It's also important that the rock candy is on the last slot of that character's inventory or the rock candy will be used and disappear. Simply give it to someone else and then swap it back to have this happen. Now you're ready to start all over again, and you can do it as many times as you like. However, 255 is the max number for these stats, so if you try and boost them past that, it'll loop back to 0, which is obviously not good. Another lesser known thing about this glitch is it doesn't have to just be the rock candy. You can pretty much use any other item you want, like the brain food lunch, to heal characters' HP and restore PP. You could create an interesting strategy with this by solely devoting a certain character to being a medic and carry sugar packets and healing items at all times, and just heal your entire party. This whole glitch is extremely useful and versatile too, so it's definitely worth shining some light on it. Here's a trick to avoid fighting enemies. Certain ones only run closer to you if you're moving too. But by tapping directions on the D-pad, you can actually move away from the enemies and they won't be able to catch up. Normally the rowdy mouse is faster than you and it's practically impossible to run around them without fighting. But by tapping you can pass them. It can be tricky to get the timing down fast, but you have as much time as you need to tap, let go, and tap again. Here's the first big skip you can do in the game. Normally you need to complete all of Onett before leaving for Twoson, and these barriers stop you from doing so. But by manipulating the game's RNG, we can force the game to spawn too many sprites on screen to the point where the one barrier is placed in the wrong spot. So how do we do this? Start off by saving in the hotel nearby and reset the console. Doing this resets the game's RNG to certain values so we can manipulate them. After loading your slot in save 1, which it has to be in by the way, head straight for the exit. As the transition is going on, I'd recommend holding down right and mashing the A button. As soon as you leave, you'll talk to nothing and continue walking down. Once you reach this fence, stop for a second while the taxi goes off screen. After that, walk around it and head straight down till you reach the sidewalk. Follow it, and as soon as you reach this corner, press A then B as fast as you can. Then hold left and continue down the sidewalk. As soon as you pass these two trees, press A, up, and then A again. This will select the check option with as little cursor movements as possible. Continue walking, and as soon as you pass this tree, press A twice to talk to nothing. The game should begin to slow down a lot, but keep walking left, and once you reach this tree, start walking down. You'll notice that the truck magically turns into two sharks and then the barrier just shows up, which means we're free to walk around the other three easily. I'll show the glitch again in real time while I quickly talk about what's happening. Earthbound has a sprite table that only allows 22 sprites to be loaded in memory at a time, and it only allows 10 enemies on screen in an attempt to prevent this from being overloaded. However, by doing all these specific movements and inputs, we're able to force a lot of enemies to spawn along with the sprites like the truck. When we get down to the arcade, there are only 5 empty slots available, but the game tries to load 6, these being the 4 barriers and the 2 cops. The game cannot handle this, so the failsafe is overriding the first sprite in the table, which is the truck, with the last barrier that needs to spawn, with the same location. That's why the truck transforms into the barrier, because it gets overwritten but still stays in the same spot. So with the barrier all the way up here, you're free to walk right on past and head towards Twoson. There's a lot going on under the hood with this trick, but the movements themselves aren't that hard. I try to keep the explanation as short as possible. Anyway, now that we can reach Twoson, it's worth noting that the barriers are still there, since the event flag to remove them was never set. Even if we advance the story and head back, the barriers are still there, so you're kind of cut off from Onett until you learn teleport. I'd imagine you can go back to this section of the game later if you wanted to in order to collect the first sanctuary. A huge thanks to Pure, Hiko, and Oxwaz for discovering this trick and figuring an actual setup out for speedrunners to utilize. This next glitch is probably my personal favorite. It allows you to clip out of bounds using stairs and walk around to any area of the game. We need to start off by getting a status ailment that reduces a character's HP. This can be a cold, sunstroke, or poison. I'm gonna use sunstroke as it's pretty easy to get. I headed to Dusty Dunes Desert, got sunstroke, and teleported to Summers. You now have to wait a little for that character's health to deplete down to critical, which is roughly 25% of their max HP. When this happens, a message will pop up on screen warning the player. The reason we need stairs is due to the animation when getting on and off them. When walking close enough to them, Ness will automatically start an animation of walking, even if you aren't touching the controller. By bringing up the warning text box as this transition is happening, it interrupts the transition and now the game isn't able to place you on land or the stairs. So now you're free to walk around anywhere you want. Before going any further, you might want to cure the sunstroke before that character dies. It's not necessary, but I did it anyway. While walking around out here, you'll notice the characters will pause for a brief moment, then the music changes. This means we've accessed another area, but the map isn't loaded in. To restore the graphics, simply open and close the soundstone. You're now able to see where you are, but the collision still isn't there. If you want to get it back, simply enter a loading zone and you'll be back to normal. If you have a destination in mind but not sure how to get there, I'd recommend using starman.net's full map. It has the exact layout of the whole game, so find where you clipped out of bounds, in my case here in Summers, and then walk around using the music as a guide. By doing this, I was able to enter Gygus' lair and then leave. The game freaked out for a second and then locks here, but you're still able to use your menu, so I opened the soundstone and after closing it, I ended up back in Summers as robots. I was then able to walk around in the main world in a way you were never able to. Sadly, you can't go too far with this as entering any new load zones will correct this state. But why did the robots thing happen to begin with? Well, when you're doing the stairs glitch, you can't actually access areas below the point you clipped out. So if you try and walk down past that point, the game corrects itself and places you back on the stairs. Going back to the map, you can see that Summers is actually pretty high up, so there's a lot of areas that we can't access from this stair. But as you can see, when we left the lair, it tried to warp us down here to the Cave of the Past, which is below Summers. So the game put us in robot form and threw us back on the stairs. So logically, I wanted to find another section of stairs lower on the map. Luckily, the stairs in Threed Graveyard are practically at the bottom, so I did the same thing there and got out of bounds. I explored a lot more by doing this, like Ness's house during the flashback. Another warning, if you go too high off the map, you'll be stuck while the game warps you back on the stairs and back in bounds. So as you can see, this glitch is pretty crazy and allows you to get out of bounds practically anywhere in the game and explore areas I never thought were possible. This is a glitch I've always thought about when fighting the Territorial Oak. After losing all of its HP, it'll explode, doing extra damage to your party, but you still win. But what if everyone dies though? Well, this causes the game to glitch out a lot. It says you both died and lost the battle, then gets cut off with the "you win" text. You're then rewarded with 4 billion XP, which you don't actually get, then the screen flashes some messed up sprites before this glorious game over screen. If we slow the footage down, you can see how glitched these things really are. I'm not 100% sure on the reason for getting 4 billion XP, but most people seem to think it's because the game is trying to divide the XP up to distribute to the living party members, which is 0. And dividing by 0 can cause some big issues with any game or program, so 4 billion XP is the result. Sadly, since no one's alive, no one gets it. Imagine you could get it though. Ness only needs around 8 million to reach the highest level 99, so this would max out his level pretty early in the game. Even though we don't get it, we still get treated to this messed up sequence, so that's good enough for me. It corrects itself after the game over sequence, so the fun ends here. Next up is probably the most well-known glitch in the game. It's known as the Shatterman glitch and allows you to die at a state when the game doesn't expect you to. There are certain spots during Earthbound when all the enemies despawn. This is during the ending sequence after defeating Gygus when it's just you and Paula, and also when the Runaway 5 is heading for Threed. By conventional means, there's no way to die during this game state as all of the enemies are gone. However, there are some exceptions. When playing through Summers normally, you'll reach this back room with 2 Shattered Men. Only defeat one and then you can continue on your playthrough, leaving the other for later. After defeating Gygus, all the enemies in the overworld are gone except for the other Shattered Man. Head back to the room and fight him. I'd also recommend unequipping your items to be safe and die faster. Once in the fight, simply press defend on both characters every time as we want him to kill us. After both Ness and Paula die, it will normally take you to a game over screen, but since we aren't expected to die at this point, it never does, keeping us at a black screen. However, you can actually move around, so hold left to access the door. Once out here, you'll see how messed up our situation really is. The graphics are extremely messed up and we're stuck as ghosts. The whole museum has this glitchy effect, which I'm guessing is due to the game trying to load the game over graphics, but fails as we're technically still alive. This mix-up only lasts in this building as it corrects itself outside. While still in the building though, I try going back into the room and we can fight the Shattered Man again, but you die right as the battle starts, repeating the cycle. You can basically keep going in and out of this room dying. Back outside though, everything's pretty normal besides Ness and Paula. Since we're dead, the menu is a little restricting as we can't teleport or revive ourselves. The only way to leave Summers is to take the boat to Scaraba, but there's nothing really to do there either. The only interesting thing is the photo event I accidentally triggered. As the camera was about to go, Ness still managed to resurrect in order to strike his signature pose. He went back to being dead after this though. Similar to the last one, the other time the game is in a state where there are no enemies is when the Runaway 5 is leaving for Threed. During this time, there's only one enemy that we can fight, Mondo Mole. When playing through the game normally, you don't have to fight him right away. After rescuing Paula, simply head back to Twoson and do the whole thing with the Runaway 5. When they get their bus ready to leave, the game is in a no enemy state, and we can now head back to the cave east of Happy Happy Village. Mondo Mole is still here and ready to fight. When in it, do the same thing as the Shatter Man and let him kill you. Upon dying, you won't get a game over screen and you can move around in the cave. However, last time we did this, the door was pretty much right next to us, but this time we have to go all the way back through the cave without being able to see. I'd recommend either pulling up a map of the place or having a second emulator pulled up copying the exact same movements as the first. Navigate your way all the way to the exit, and if you follow the path correctly, you'll now be outside as ghosts. The game behaves the same way as it normally would, but your menus are screwed up again. I decided to head back and get on the bus with the Runaway 5. After arriving in Threed, we got off, and right as I was about to take control of Ness, the game freaked out and took me to a messed up game over screen. You're able to pick up right where you left off in Threed, this time with Ness alive. Just remember, if you did do this glitch and play through the rest of the game, you never defeated Mondo Mole, so you didn't collect your second melody, so go back and do that at some point. At the end of the game, you'll drop off Paula, which is the first time Ness is alone since the beginning of the game. So now the only logical thing to do is rent a bicycle and teleport to Deep Darkness. You're now able to ride your bike around in here. I'm not really sure if this is a glitch, but it definitely wasn't intended. The sprite for the water below you doesn't seem to work properly either. It is fun to ride around in here though, and see how happy it makes Ness. You can also traverse deep darkness a lot faster than regular walking. So that's all the glitches I got. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, drop a like and subscribe. This video was a really big project for me, but I really wanted to have all the Earthbound glitches packed into one video. If you would like to check out some of my other videos on this game, I made one all about Earthbound's RNG values and what goes on under the hood of this amazing game. But with that, I'm gonna get up out of here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, see ya!